Boy, I mean, if the question is, do you need to be under angst? Do you need to have a broken heart? Do you need to be in pain? You don't need to be in all those things, but having experienced the adversities of life, or whatever categories they fall into, cre- gives you a tool or gives you something to pull from, and use your tools to create, the art to which we all can relate to, or hope that we would all relate to. So that's where, when someone says, man, do you have to be a tortured artist to be a good artist? I was like, no, you just need to have gone through some things, right? And whatever those things are, it doesn't have to be painful. You just need to have been the person to climb to the top of that mountain.
Welcome back to another episode of Artful Pods of Wisdom, where today we're unpacking a deeply personal yet universally relevant topic: how artists, like many of us, turn personal pain into powerful expression. Join our guest, Marcus Omari, poet, writer, performer, and artist and arts administrator, Robin McNair, with pianist, songwriter, and content creator, Elvin Capulli, along with me, your host, Sofia Cuevas, as we explore the intimate connection between creativity and healing, and how transforming our darkest experiences into art can shine a light on unknown paths, not just for personal recovery, but also for communal understanding. Let's join the conversation.
The communities I've worked in, that's also plays a role in it. I had no previous ties to any one community, right? So when I got to Orange County, my community just started to grow out of the readings I attended. I attended readings in the city of Orange, in Costa Mesa, and Santa Ana, and San Juan Capistrano, right? And there was no one to say, well, this is what you should go, this is what you should do, this is who you should meet. Kind of going back to, creating your own model. Um, yeah, I created my own community, from bridge communities, really people from all over, so that when I started doing my own events and saying, hey, I think there's something that is missing that I'd like to see, um, I always pulled from all the different communities and artists and writers that I had been a part of and still very much tie into. It just became a beautiful thing. We did an event called Church in the Wild. It was someone we was just talking about that with another friend of mine. And I remember when we came up with the name. Well, for those who know, it's from Kanye and Jay-Z, but not everyone knew that, right? To us, it was kind of a nod and a wink, Church in the Wild. Um, but some people didn't know that. So once they got their promotion, um, we had a large segment of the uh, religious community, right, show up, right? Which, here's the thing, which I knew was going to happen. And me and my um, devious mind was,
Right.
if we call it Church in the Wild, right, I know there's going to be, on some point, some type of misinterpretation. And we're going to take that um, obstacle and turn it into an opportunity. So ahead of time, now I'm off on talking about Church in the Wild. I pre-planned to specifically have um, a diverse group of backgrounds, religions, and ethnicities represented, right? The ask was not that they perform something tied to whatever belief they had. What I wanted to show was, you could have 5 or 6 artists strategically from me, from different religious backgrounds, who all shared that one common talent and skill and desire to write poetry in common. And when you get them all in one room, right, not knowing where everyone's from, let all the similarities, seep out into the audience, and let all the differences also take hold of you, right? You'll hear something that you would have never heard, because you're like, man, when was the last time I was at a reading, with a Muslim woman up there, speaking of her background or experiences, unless they proactively sought that out. But if I could use the arts as a guise and an opportunity to bring everyone under one big tent, why not call it Church in the Wild? And why not have that where we can just go out there and enjoy ourselves?
Well, how do you cultivate your, how do you help cultivate your own authentic voice through vulnerability in that space, but also help kids find theirs too.
The transmission of authenticity. All right. So,
Is that possible?
now that's a better question.
Okay, well, let's go
Can't,
there. You don't want to just
um,
can things.
no, the quick answer is no, you can't.
Yeah.
I can't loan out authenticity. Because it's consistently and forever being discovered in my own life, right? And in the areas that I may consider myself authentic, I can also find places in my life where I'm inauthentic, right? Where I still wear the mask. And when to tie it into poetry, um, metaphors were the mask, which I absolutely loved. And I remember that used to be a part of my conversations, which to students, which was, man, you can hide all kinds of things in your life in metaphors. I was like, just imagine being able to step on stage and speak for 3 or 4 minutes and everyone go, wow. And you go, yeah, I told you a lot of personal stuff, right? But they're thinking about the suns and the stars and the moons and so on and so forth. So that's why I say the idea of authenticity, it's how you wield it.
Let's dig a little deeper. Think about a time when you faced something really tough. How did you get through it? For many, channeling these raw emotions into their work isn't just about coping. It's a way to reclaim power and agency. Research in trauma-informed care shows that engaging with the arts can significantly enhance emotional regulation and resilience. This trauma-informed practice then evolves and becomes healing-centered engagement, where the act of creating from the pain transforms and redefines the pain into purpose. Imagine if we collectively transformed our pain into passion and creation, connecting communities through positive paths.
And that's so inspiring. But those are the kinds of things you find the universal truths, or those resonating things, even in the metaphors. Maybe you told a lot about yourself, but they also found themselves in your words, that they could use them. I tell Sophia this: I often use other people's words because I can't find mine. Mine has to come out sometimes, I think, in a different way.
But I think, and I know that's what art is here for, to borrow and paraphrase another writer, and I'll be very careful not to butcher James Baldwin this time.
Yeah, I try to look it up, whatever you said on that video. I was like, yeah, I can't find. But
but the idea that, he says, I do have my pen, right? Which is a blessing and a curse. But at least at the end of the day, he has something he can go back to, right? To express his experiences, what's hurt him, what's made him laugh, what's made him smile, and all the things that he's learned in life through his own experiences and through interactions with others. And that became his decision and his purpose going forward, was to write so that someone who experienced heartbreak for the first time would maybe take it a little bit lighter, or would understand the process in the moment and then maybe looking back on it, right? Someone who experienced death in the family, or someone who's going through their first celebration, that whether it be through poetry or through stories or through movies, we see a connection to either what we're going through or what we may go through. And if the artist is, let me be judgmental. If the artist's intent is around that, then I think it's a wonderful thing, that we can make the lives of others around us that much easier and better, and them not know that that's what we've been put here to do, and that's our burden to bear.
Moving from personal stories to our communities, art creates a bridge between isolated experiences and shared resilience. It's about more than displaying art in galleries or performances on stages. It's about how these expressions reach out and touch others, sparking empathy and perhaps even action. In settings from classrooms to therapy groups, arts-based methods are being used to foster not only healing, but also strong supportive networks. Makes you wonder, how might we set the stage where these multi-tiered systems of supports authentically connect our community in genuine healing? Let's get back to the conversation.
I think it begins with the example of self, right? It's hard to create the space, but if someone sees me doing it, then maybe they'll join in, right? And then that becomes a more of a congregation than a space that was intentionally created. I'd find it difficult, and I've kind of backed away from, using phrases like, oh, it's going to be a safe space for artists or a safe space for poets. I'm like, listen, I'll show you vulnerability. And if you join in with me, the space will be created for authenticity and for truth. But I to answer your question, I start with self when it's I wrote down when you wrote the word when you said the word pain. I'm trying to.
Do you think you have to suffer or experience the artist's pain in order to create?
Yeah.
Feel the deep, to experience that high of metaphor.
And do you have to be in that space to create? That's another one. I have my own thoughts on that, but do you have to be in that space of pain and suffering in order to be that artist, that authentic artist?
In terms of kind of getting out, I guess getting out pain. That's where I was in my mind. I thought you were going to go. And started with journaling, right? That you don't necessarily have to start with the art itself. Like I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a poem because I experienced this, right? So I'm going to stop tying it to pain. You have an experience. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make art out of this thing. I think it rarely starts that way, and mine didn't start that way. It starts from finding some way to express it, and then you find a category for your expression, which is, oh, this is more like poetry, or oh, this is more like song, right? Or oh, this is more like sculpting, right? What you're doing is this what you have in your mind, right? Your expression finds a maybe like a preset category, and if you're really good, you can bust out of the same categories that it fell into the first time. So now when we're talking about journaling, therein lies the pain, right? So if you go back to my high school and my middle school journals, you wonder if there was a happy day in my life, right? Why journal on those days, right? No, my pen was not moved by happiness. Oh, I have something great to share with you today. No. My journal is full of
Teenage angst.
the pain and angst because, and I won't say because, I learned, which is it became a form of processing, right? It's expression. The word expression came like, oh, I'm writing because I'm expressing myself. Yeah, it's also you processing, so that you have a record of what you went through because you don't want to go through that again, right? This is what she said. This is what they did. This is what happened. It becomes a record that if you do need to go back to it, you can go, something like that happened. That's how that felt. Or just from making that record itself, even if you don't revisit it, for myself, just the act of recording it, it put me in a different place. It created a new base or a new bar. I could not go beyond that new mark that I had drawn in the sand of, okay, this is this. Boom. All right, we're not going to fall beneath that anymore.
It allowed you to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're doomed to repeat it.
So to all artists, right, just step out and share something. You may not be the greatest movie maker going forward, but you may have that one cult classic, right? where everyone goes, man, that was a cheesy flick, but why are we watching it 20, 30 years later, right? Were they a one-hit wonder? Well, man, what a hit it was, right?
As we think about the broader impacts, it's important for educators, leaders, and therapists to harness these insights into the art's power. Remember, Maslow's before Bloom. It's essential we meet the basic emotional and psychological needs of our students before we can expect them to reach for higher cognitive achievements. Integrating arts into the curriculum as a form of social emotional learning allows students to process and express complex emotions safely, setting the stage for academic and personal growth. Research supports this approach with studies such as the National Endowment for the Arts report, The Arts and Achievement in At-Risk Youth, demonstrating that students who engage regularly in artistic activities exhibit enhanced emotional intelligence and improved conflict resolution skills. Considering these benefits, how might we adjust our educational and mental health practices to fully support the whole child, and even adults in leading, ensuring they're not just surviving, but thriving and ready to learn and implement?
Thoughts. That's what I was interested in. You said you have your own, I have my own thoughts on whether series.
I remember my question to you, I think. It was about the whole authenticity as an artist. Do you have to be in that place of pain in order to write it? But then as we were talking right now, I had a different question, because I've now seen you also perform your poetry a couple times for our students. And I have this curious question of, it's one thing when you're writing it, right? You're most likely in some sort of solitude or somewhere where no one knows that you're writing whatever you're writing down. Do you feel like when you perform that you have to go back to that place?
Oh,
That's my heavy question for right now. In order
uh,
to get it across the way
Like
you would
reliving the
like it to.
memory trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
that's
an
a good
anchor,
question.
like an anchor emotion. So there's listen, now we're just done. So there was a, a very important and influential album by an artist named D'Angelo. His second album, Voodoo, was released 25 years ago, I think like 3 days ago. And on that, he has a song. I don't know if it's, I think it's called Root, right? And when you hear the album, for those who've heard it, it stands out. It stands out as like, man, I love that song. Everyone wanted to hear it in concert. He would never perform it. And he always said, he was like, it's just too painful, right? And when I tell you that thing just has a jam and the beat is like, come on, man, we want that song. And he's like, can't do it, man. The relationship it reminds me of, the woman it reminds me of, it's for the album. It's to share it, for me to get it out. I'm glad you love it. Probably not going to be doing any concert. So that anchor emotion, I've had poems like that. I think it rests in the healing, right? It rests in the process or where you are, because all poetry ain't meant to perform, right? And that's a lesson that I learned. Just because I read it, just because I wrote it, just because I had the emotion, just because it's an exercise in vulnerability, doesn't mean I need to get up there and share it. I don't need to always I don't want to say reflect my trauma, but overshare, right? My deepest, darkest feelings and emotions. Some things can be kept to myself and just be as creative. So if I've gone along that healing journey, or I feel healed enough, then I can begin to share that poem.
And the more you create, the more you create. Like just being in the space to, but also having rest periods to incubate and let it come out. So,
Elvin, you had so I don't forget it. Going back to what I was kind of addressing when you asked that question, I was going to say there's also something to finding that anchor emotion, sharing it continually, and then just moving past and moving on from it, right? Sometimes, opposite from D'Angelo, sometimes you can perform or share that art a lot in the beginning and then go, no need to share that anymore, right? And then you're just on from it. It's the song doesn't hit the same anymore. It doesn't make you feel as passionate about it anymore. And that's just another side of the coin, which is I just don't get sad anymore, or it doesn't make me as angry. I'm not as upset. It still may be a great poem that someone else, like Nikki Giovanni, rest in peace, right? A lot of her early poetry was full of, um, she'd she'd smack me upside my head if I ever changed the word. Anger would be the right word. She'd be like, "Yep, I was angry," right? A lot of her early poetry was full of anger and shared based on her observations, right? So the anger she was justifying, right? She was like, if you saw what I saw, if you experienced what I experienced, you'd be just as angry, right? James Baldwin said the same thing. To be an educated Black man, paraphrasing, is to walk around the world, continuously in anger, right? We just don't show you all the time. But after you've processed that, you can move on to other things, right? Nikki Giovanni wrote a lot about love. I go, man, it's so tragic that everyone just remembers her for, turning over police cars and threatening to burn down buildings in her poetry and so on and so forth. I was like, she was a huge advocate for love poetry. And one of the reasons when she said, and again, now I'm quoting Nikki Giovanni, another anchor influence to me, who said, I think it's really nice, and I loved how she said it too. It's kind of weird. I think it's really nice that poets should write love poems. We need more love poems, right? And I go, that is my hero. But it's also, the woman who made me think, man, I can write about turning over cars and the authority and yada yada yada. And at the same time, she's like, don't forget the love poems, right?
Looking forward, how do we expand the role of arts in healing as we understand more about its benefits? Envisioning a future where art is as fundamental to our school fabric and community as technology or science could transform how we approach mental health, education, and community building. What kind of support structures would we need to truly embrace art's potential to heal and unite? Something to think about as we get back into the conversation.
It's on community. It says community cannot take root in a divided life. Long before community assumes external shape and form, it must be present as a seed in an undivided self. Only as we are in communion with ourselves can we find community in others. I went back to that because I was talking to a friend that's out of Bell Hooks, but she was quoting another writer. Talking to another friend of mine a few weeks ago, and them remarking on the community they've built internationally and what works and what doesn't work, and the journey I've had in community, local, statewide, and then nationally, internationally as well. It's just that idea that the more you kind of heal yourself and work on yourself, the more and become authentic, the more you'll find that authentic community. The less authentic you are with yourself, you will find that your community is also inauthentic. So if you're questioning your friends and behaviors and so on and so forth, you should look in how you're presenting yourself, right? Are you calling in your true self based on what you're putting out, right? And to other artists as well. If you are about that life, others who are about that life will see that and be like, that's where I want to be. But if you're pretending to be something else in order to fit in, belong, or not be seen at all, then you will find yourself in a community of undetermined people.
Your echo chamber, if you will.
Thanks for tuning in to today's discussion on the transformative power of art. We've shared stories, talked about heroes and their inspiring words, and perhaps challenge some thoughts about the role of creativity in overcoming adversity. As we part, carry with you the idea that every stroke of the brush, every note in a melody, every line in a script, every movement in a dance can be a step towards healing, not just for the artist, but for all of us. Keep reflecting, keep connecting, and let's keep pushing the boundaries of what art can achieve in our lives and our communities. Until next time, stay creative and stay connected. Thanks for joining the conversation.
And I just enjoy the idea of expression through any artistic means. My forte is poetry, and then looking for different areas to bring that to light and collab, whether that be stepping on stage to perform myself or working with musicians or dancers or so on and so forth.